So, hello everyone, and thanks for taking an hour of your time to join us today. By now, you should be familiar with our Baker Academy, and for signing in for today's webinar, you will obtain a Baker token for being here. Let's head on to the presentation now. Earlier this year, we published a paper that shows the top bread trends. From there, I picked up these trends here that are relevant to the artisan bread category. The keto trend, a high protein, low carb trend that is really strong in the market right now. According to Mintel's global new product database, the term keto in the product description saw a 2.3% growth in the past year, while IRI reported sales of keto last year at 68.5 million. Now that most consumers are relating keto to zero net carbs, it's given bakers room to develop high fiber and low carb products with fiber and flour. It is one hot trend. And to keep up with this trend, we will share a tip on how to bake with fiber later this presentation. Vegan. Fortunately, most artisan breads are vegan, except for maybe your cheese and brioche breads, of course. It is relatively easy to bake for this trend because there are a ton of plant-based alternatives out there, including egg and milk replaces. Chia seeds and chia powders, by the way, are great for vegan formulations. The clean label trend is inclusive of the artisanal bread category. Many consumers perceive artisan bread as clean label and buy artisan bread for its simplicity in its label. If you're thinking of baking artisan bread, think clean as well. All right. Organic. Now, this is something that is growing in the artisan bread category, even though now is the only time I see artisanal breads that are organic are at farmers markets and your local artisanal bakery, right? Um, It has not quite made significant shelf space yet on the grocery store, but mark my words, it's gonna come. It's coming. Gluten-free is a strong trend right now, but boy, it's already hard to make gluten-free bread. Can you imagine making gluten-free artisan bread? I know it's difficult, and I haven't really seen it, but it can be done. It can be done. Oops, I skip ahead too fast. Sorry. Sustainable agriculture is an up and coming buzzword with the millennial population. It really means no tillage, leaving space for wildlife, protecting wildlife, and providing natural protection for soil erosion. So, sustainable agriculture also helps soil nutrition and provides a better environment for animals and soil. Sustainable agriculture can both be organic and conventional. There is sustainable certification, so all you need to do is ask your ingredient provider for that if this is part of your strategy to enter this trend. Okay, we all know what artisan bread looks like, but since there is no official guidelines to it, bakers have really become very creative with this term. Generally, what I see is artisan bread formulas are lean. They involve only water, flour, and yeast. Pretty simple. The manipulation of these three key ingredients can give you a batard that is a lower hydration or a ciabatta, which is a higher hydration. So just by manipulating water, yeast, and flour, you can get pretty much a variety of different artisan breads. Okay. Most artisan breads use sourdough starter and yeast pre-ferments to hydrate the dough so that it can absorb more water. This pre-fermentation step is also done to improve the flavors in the bread, providing a deep alcoholic and fruity flavor. Artisan bread have thick crust that gives the ability for custom scoring designs. It is also frequently baked on wood burning, gas, or peel ovens with steam injection. And the bread from this form of baking results in a chewy crust with a moist crumb, most often characterized as dual texture profile. When it's sliced, due to the high hydration levels and long fermentation times, artisan breads reveal an open crumb. It is usually, when sliced, a very aromatic bread with flavors that are strong. So these 8 features are how I would characterize an artisan bread. I wanted to share this formulation with you because I wanted to show you how clean and simple a sourdough rye formula can be. It's only 8 ingredients, folks. 8 ingredients are needed here. Can you deal with less? Yes, you can deal with less. You can take out the mole inhibitors, you can take out the enzymes, you can even remove the levain if you want to do a straight dough. But basically, the longer fermentation you give it, the bigger the levain percentage you give it, the nicer the holes, the bigger the holes in the breadcrumb itself. Okay. If you like to develop different products in the artisan category, you can try these other ingredients as well. You can consider other seeds and grains like oats, amaranth, quinoa, sesame, and chia seeds. You can also use other fibers from citrus sources, oats, wheat, and even chia. There are 2 kinds of malts you can use, diastatic and non-diastatic. The real definition and how different they are exist in BAKERpedia.com. So go look up these 2 terms on BAKERpedia. Basically, diastatic malt is a source for amylase and would definitely help if your Foley number is above 250. Non-diastatic malt can be added when you need that extra color and flavor. I love artisan breads with that added dimension of non-diastatic malts, personally. Lastly, there are plenty of options in the dry sourdough powder market if you do not have the room for long fermentation. These dried sourdoughs will help provide everything from an alcoholic to a cheesy aroma. If you need a name for a dried sourdough provider, please let us know. I would like to focus on chia. Excuse me. Focus on chia for a beat because not too much is known of this seed in mainstream baking. So what is chia? Chia, when you hydrate chia seeds, as you can see here on the right, they form mucilage around them. This mucilage is actually soluble fiber, and its key functional characteristics are that it has a very high water absorption capacity. As such, it acts as a thickener, and that thickener increases viscosity of any system that you use it in, including your doughs. This results in texture improvement and improves the shelf life of your product. It is especially beneficial for gluten-free formulations as well. It can replace xanthan and CMC gums to actually produce a cleaner gluten-free label if you're in this segment of the market. I reached out to our sponsor, Benexia, to see what would chia flour look like in a bread formula. And this may be something that you can use in your toolbox for developing artisan breads. Here, chia powder is chia flour. It is used at 4.5% total formulation, which is really less than 10% dry flour basis. It will help provide you a good source of fiber claim because the total fiber per slice would be close to 2 grams. Remember, this number is important in keto formulation because the fiber nets out the carbs, minuses out the carbs. So use fiber as your tool to get to zero net carbs when you're formulating for a wheat bread like artisan whole wheat bread, okay? When you use chia powder in this formulation, you can claim a good source of fiber and protein, and it also has a great texture due to the moisture retention as well. Now, here are some formulation tips when you do formulate with chia powder. When replacing starch or flour ingredients, you can do so at a dosage of 10 to 15%. For example, if you use 100% wheat flour, try replacing 90% try replacing 10% of that with chia powder, and the rest will be 90% wheat flour, okay? Adjust your water 10 to 20% higher to actually obtain the right viscoelasticity for the dough. Because as mentioned previously, chia powder actually absorbs quite a bit of water. Also, if you are using gluten-free application, like I said, xanthan gum and CMC can be partially removed as it is replaced by the function in the chia powder. This lessens the amount of ingredients and provides for a cleaner label. Keep to your regular baking process. There should be no change needed when using chia powder. The Benexia process, I want to share a little bit more here with you because you are probably wondering, how is chia flour being obtained? Is there any kind of magic to it? It is truly just hard work. That's what I see. So the Benexia process takes the chia seed through a heat-treated process to ensure food-grade chia before processing. What this means is this is really important, folks, because I know not too many chia processors do this. Benexia actually make sure that the seeds are clean before they process it. After they are clean, oil is extracted and the rest is milled and segregated using their proprietary process into chia powder 435. Chia powder 435 is suitable for baking applications. And as you can see, they put a lot in their process to keep the quality consistent for the baker. In this next slide, I just want to go take a really bird's eye view on artisan bread production, just to show you what does a typical artisan bread facility and process look like. Usually, we would start with yeast pre-ferments, sourdough, whole grain, or bran pre-soaking, or even sprouted grains with grain germination. You can actually put all these together as a second step with the yeast pre-ferments as the first step. After a period of long fermentation, it can range anywhere from 8 hours to 24, sometimes 30 hours. The longer fermentation, pre-fermentation you give it, the better the flavor will be. Um, After the first round of fermentation, your minors and your final flour is added into the dough mixing process. After it's mixed, it's bulk ferment for sometimes 45 minutes to an hour. If you do any kind of referred fermentation overnight, this is also considered bulk fermentation. It then goes into folding and forming, which is pretty much a hand process in most facilities still, but nothing can stop you really from automating this process as well. From there, it goes back into another bulk fermentation where it's usually given after the final fold, not more than an hour before you can start dividing and shaping it. My suggestion between bulk ferment and dividing and shaping is to keep it as little as possible so that you maintain the integrity of the gas bubbles. After dividing and shaping, you go into final proofing, and that's going to be in a proofer. And a lot of artisan bakeries, they just wheel this up into the shop floor and just wait until the oven is available before they put everything in. Okay, but final proofing is important in terms of keeping product consistency, and I would suggest many of you to just look into keeping this particular final proof consistent by using a proofer. Okay. And in terms of the settings for the proofer, go to our final proofing page and you will get more information on how long to proof it for at what temperature. After that, the artisan bread is usually scored or floured and it's baked in the oven. It is then cooled, sliced, and packaged. All right, so tips for processing. Pre-ferment sourdough starter development and maturation. This is essential for optimum dough leavening and product volume, as most formulas may not contain added yeast. Yes, you heard right. Most artisanal bakeries don't use commercial yeast, and they prefer to use sourdough starters to give that leavening action to the bread dough. All right. But I do not foresee this happening in many commercial bakeries because it's just not consistent enough. And yeast just gives you that consistency, that predictability. So most commercial bakeries are going to still use yeast. Okay. Long dough fermentation with sourdoughs and pre-ferments require more time than your compressed or dry yeast to generate equivalent dough expansion, right? So that this is the underlying reason why a lot of artisanal breads undergo long dough fermentation. So some people might ask, can we cut this into half or can we really cut this down? It's a give and take situation. You can definitely cut this down by using yeast, but you're going to lose the flavor and the acidity of that long ferment. Okay. Yeah, you can generate dough expansion without yeast with sourdough, but can you really afford that? That's the bottom line question for many, many bakeries. So here's a key tip: gentle dough dividing and shaping. Why? Because after all that work in the long fermentation and producing a large crumb, you don't want to send this through a machine to basically homogenize the gas cells and get small gas cells, right? You want to keep the integrity of the large bubbles in there. So you want to look into equipment that is low stress and provides low stress dividing and shaping. I've seen this done successfully in quite a few commercial bakeries. And for the commercial bakeries that aren't successful with this particular step, they go back to hand forming and hand dividing. So that's a step you don't want to do. Okay, invest in equipment for dough dividing, low stress dough dividing. Now, scoring and splitting of the dough. Some customers and bakers may agree that a nicely scored bread is the first thing people consider when buying artisan bread. So this is really key, okay? Don't skip this step by not investing in a good splitter. And oven steaming is necessary to give it that gloss, okay? Thanks to the magic of dew point. Injecting saturated steam at low pressure promotes condensation of water vapor on the dough surface. So, what happens when you do this? It covers up the pores on the surface of the crust and it gives it that glossy uh, thickness and nice crisp texture to the bread. If you need to convert from a pan bread to an artisan bread line, this is one of the most challenging things that you need to look into. Baking, long bake times, and consistent heat inputs are required to bring the moisture content from dough out. Okay, so the values from uh, dough moisture values go from 50% all the way down to 38%. So your final product is going to have 38% moisture. Unlike regular pan bread, which requires about 10% moisture removal in the oven, artisan bread doughs have high hydration levels and therefore require 16 to 20% big loss during baking. If using direct gas fired ovens, a robust extraction system is required to remove enough CFMs of combustion gases. So you really need to adjust properly to really drive that moisture out. I want to thank Benexia again for sponsoring this Baker View, and I would like to invite Remy to talk a little bit more about his company because I find it so interesting. Remy, tell us more about Benexia, a woman-owned sustainable company.
Hello, I'm Remy, and thank you for being here present in this webinar. Thank you, Dr. Lin, for the presentation. And yes, Benexia, we are basically, as Dr. Lin mentioned, an expert in chia. We start since early 2000, where we basically was a farm, let's say a group of farmers and Benexia CEO Sandra decided to create this brand in order to focus on sustainability and high quality product. Our process in the from the agriculture, from the nursing, from the seeding of the chia seed, the growing, the cleaning process in the post harvest process, and the ingredient manufacture is all sustainable. And we are very committed with our community and with the environmental where we produce our products. We in the agriculture is we use like no-till farming, natural soil nutrition, crop rotations, natural barrier in order to protect the wildlife and give to the wildlife also a working symbiotic with the wildlife in order for living. We know we understand that we're using the environmental to produce an amazing product, so we have to protect it. And in terms of ingredients, since we have done a lot of knowledge, and one of the most important things when you're doing a when you use an ingredient is that you use a great quality raw material or crop. And if you have a really good quality ingredient, your product's going to be tasting better, the product's going to be having better performance, and that's what we focus on at Benexia. And what we have developed very special equipments in order to have and create ingredients from chia, 100% from chia, that do not use any water or have a very low impact to the environmental, let's say, footprints, to make the best application in a specific application. In this case, the chia powder for 35 for the bakery application. Thank you once again for being here present in this webinar.